evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Oh, I believe there's evil people. I know it. They're called psychopaths, and I've had encounters with many of them, and I've actually decided to study them in just the last year because I'm being harassed by one. And they seem to not have any connection to soul, and lying comes easily off their lips. And I've learned one thing about psychopaths, which I think is very, very important. And when you have an encounter with a psychopath, realize that A, you're never going to win the encounter. So just get the hell out. Go, run. You cannot win an argument or a war with a psychopath, because unless you're a psychopath, you cannot think like a psychopath. And a psychopath, the way they think is so scary that you don't even want to go down that road. And psychopaths have no guilt. They'll say anything. But what I've really come to understand is that whatever a psychopath is accusing you of, specifically accusing you of, is exactly what they are doing. So that's very good knowledge to have, because whatever they're saying about you, you now know what they're really doing in their life. So if they're accusing you of lying, that's because they're lying. If they're accusing you of stealing, that's because they're stealing. If they're accusing you of going out on your wife, that's because they're going out on their wife. And I think I think the world is becoming aware now of these people, and we have to understand that there's three places that these psychopathic people tend to go to. One is crimes, criminal actions. So if you go to a prison and you give people psychopath tests, you'll find that there's a lot of psychopaths in prison. Two, the corporate world tends to have a lot of psychopaths in it, and government, politicians and military especially, tend to have a high amount of psychopaths. They're charming, superficially charming always. Bill Clinton is a classic psychopath. Sorry about that. And it's probably a robocall from the Republicans.
From a psychopath. It's voice
Speaking of psychopath.
It's voice-activated psychopathian.
Exactly. They're bombing me with their calls, and I won't answer the phone because I'm so sick of them. And so, you know, our president now, I think, is probably a psychopath. I think Mitt Romney's a psychopath, probably. A lot of Bill Clinton, his speech at the Democratic Convention was classic psychopath. Oh, my goodness.
Okay,
I think that's called.
Oh, they got okay. Listen, that was great, Jay. I'm gonna I have to take a piss, so I'm gonna have Will read you the next question.
All right, let me get rid of this phone call.
Okay.
Well, I'm on the interview. All right, I'm back.
Hey, this is Will now.
Hey,
how's it going?
Hey.
So here's the next one for you. James Joyce was the first. What's that? Oh, James Joyce was the first projectionist.
No, go ahead.
James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He checked out and asked, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, William Faulkner said that the best fiction can be more true than journalism. Why do we have to reproduce things in order to get them? Why do we go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, that's a really good question. I love James Joyce, and he's had a huge influence on me early on. It's true that life is better than entertainment, but entertainment, especially films, like I said earlier, allow us to immerse ourselves if the film is good. Excuse me, it has to be a good film. Allows us to immerse ourselves in the symbolic. So it becomes a ceremony. So, that we now know from the studies of hunter-gatherers that the most successful hunter-gatherers were the ones who had a religion, had ceremony, had ritual. And so it was very important for the group to gather and to perform the same thing together so that the internal energies of the group were more coherent. And I think that movies do the same thing, good movies. I saw Avatar in a very, very right-wing redneck little town in Oregon, and I was sitting in the theater and it was getting near the end, and I realized that everyone around me was sobbing. And I was like, what? And you're all cowboys, you know, and watched them walking in with their cowboy boots and their hats, and they're all in the ranching area. And I turned around, I took off my 3D glasses, and I do what I really like to do in movies, which is to turn around and look at people looking at movies. It's one of my very favorite things to do. And when I heard the sobbing, I turned around, and every single one of these rednecks had tears pouring down under their glasses, and they were all trying to hide their tears. The men especially were grabbing their cheeks and wiping them as fast as they could so their wives wouldn't see that they were being completely obliterated by this movie. And as I was leaving the theater, and I was maybe the second day that it opened, I have a thing for James Cameron films. So as I was leaving the theater, I said to my wife, I said, well, that's going to be the biggest hit of all time. And she said, oh, come on. And I said, no, that's going to be the biggest hit movie of all time. She said, why do you say that? I said, because he reached into our soul, and he grabbed a piece of us, and he exposed it to the world, to us, symbolically, that we were the aliens. We were the ones attacking and killing the innocent. We were the ones ripping the world apart in our own greed. And in that moment of understanding, even the hardest, coldest redneck in the world knew deep down the truth. And it was interesting because right after Avatar, psychologists started talking about post-Avatar syndrome, where they were being flooded by people coming in to see them who could not get over this movie. And they were, in general, Republicans and urban dwellers that were having this effect. And it's because he masterfully showed us what we had lost and showed us that we were the ones responsible for what we had lost. And I think if I don't miss my guess, that Cameron and Avatar are the first step towards a re-emergence of the hunter-gatherer, which is where I think we're going back to.
Very good. That was beautiful, Jay.